Welcome to the Business Growth Spotlight. And I have an amazing conversation for you today. I just been chatting with my guest behind the scenes, and we have some really cool stuff that he's going to share with you. I'm really excited about it, so I can't wait to share it with you today. But before we dive in, we need to get some business handled. The Business Growth Spotlight is sponsored by HLH Growth Solutions, helping business leaders become more visible, to build authority, dominate social media, and drive revenue growth. If you're tired of inconsistent leads and missed opportunities, Spotlight to Scale is for you. Head over to spotlighttoscale.com to grab your free blueprint and download. My guest today that I'm so honored to have here with me today is Mike Litton, and he has over 33 years of experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. He believes everyone has a story and our passion to help them tell it, and has a passion to help them tell it. He never wants you to miss an episode. So please be sure to subscribe to his podcast, which we're going to talk about today, which is called the Mike Litton Experience. So welcome, Mike, to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's fantastic to have you here. And I want to hear about your podcast, but before we do, can you introduce yourself, share a little bit more than I did just now, and tell people, how you got started and what you do, and a little bit about your journey to get here.
So how I got started in real estate, or how I got started in the podcast?
Well, the podcast I want to talk about, but how did you get started in real estate? Because that came first.
I got turned down for a home loan.
That's why you got started in real estate. Oh.
Yeah. So be careful saying no to me, right? So the very first home loan I ever applied for, I was declined. And I had gone into a bank. A bank no longer exists, but I'd gone into a bank, and I was actually referred to this loan officer. And I went in, I filled out the paperwork, did everything that I was supposed to do, explained to him exactly what he would find on the credit report. By the way, I had perfect credit, not a single blemish on my credit.
Wow.
Told him exactly what was going on, explained to him everything, told him what he'd see, the whole thing. If all he did was spend an extra 5-10 minutes verifying what I told him was true and giving me the benefit of the doubt, I would have been approved and we wouldn't even be talking. So I ended up getting declined. I get this form letter 3 weeks later in the mail. It says that I've been declined. So I go into the branch, and he goes in the back and hides. And so I asked the branch manager, I'm like, hey, can you help me? And she goes, I've never done a loan in my life. The only person in this place that can do a loan is that loan officer. I said, well, he won't talk to me. He won't return my calls. He won't help me figure out how to turn a no into a yes. And so I went to my dad, who is my sage. When life doesn't make sense, I talk to him. Went to my dad and I told him what was going on. He goes, I don't know why we're having this conversation. Okay. He goes, you've never taken no for an answer in your life. I raised you, remember? You've never taken no for an answer in your life. I don't know why you're doing it now. And that basically, what I took from that conversation was I needed to go get my real estate license, get in the mortgage business, and know what this guy knew, because I knew I could do it better, right? Mm-hmm. And thousands and thousands and thousands of home loans later, I have 33 years experience in the business, and I don't get loans declined. I get them approved, right? And the very first month I was in the business, I got a loan that approved that had been declined by 8 different lenders. And if we hadn't received the approval as when we did, 2 weeks later, they would have lost their home to foreclosure. And it was their dream home they'd been building for 2 years. Wow. And so, the market had turned and everything was crazy. And when I got started in the business, 30-year fixed rates were 9.5%. 6 months prior, they had been 10. So it was a very, very different time. We did everything in paper. We had this thing that came along that was a big time luxury called fax machines. I'm dating myself, right? But it was an amazing time, and it was an amazing opportunity. And I learned a ton, absolutely learned a ton. And I still use a lot of that today. So yeah, that's how I got started in the business.
Yeah. Talk about growth, right? Fax machines to now scanning an email.
Yeah.
Easy.
It's nuts. You take a photograph and you got it scanned. You know?
Exactly. You don't even need a scanner anymore. You
Nope,
can
don't
just
need a scanner
take it.
anymore.
Exactly. It's crazy how fast things are changing and growing. Thank you for sharing that story. And I love that you shared that, you took adversity and a
Mhm.
no, and it completely changed the trajectory of your life. Like you said, we
Yeah,
wouldn't be talking right now. Who
yeah.
knows what you would be doing and what you would be creating in the world, but would be different. I know it'd be amazingness and fabulousness, but it just would be different.
Well,
So
thank you. I appreciate that.
how did that lead you to your podcast now? Because I know your podcast, I was lucky enough to be on it. And it's an amazing podcast. So for those of you listening, go listen to it. Mike is incredible.
Thank
And
you.
you get to hear the stories and the journeys of all of his guests, which is so inspiring. And everybody has a different story. You have a story who's listening to us now. So what made you start your podcast? Like, how did that you go from being in real estate, investing, helping people with mortgages and creating that dream for their life into now you're launching your incredibly successful podcast?
So we're going to fast forward a little bit.
Mhm.
I started in the business in 1992 on the mortgage side. And in year 2000, I had an opportunity to buy and start a Keller Williams franchise, Keller Williams Realty franchise,
Mhm.
which I did. And I owned it for 18 years. During that time, we sold a lot of real estate and I financed a lot of homes. And I mean, we did really, really well. What I found though was after the Great Recession in 2011, people were losing their homes to foreclosure. And I was representing these banks that needed these homes sold that had been foreclosed on. And part of being a REO broker, real estate owned is the REO um, acronym. Real estate owned is so we have to go and knock on the door and tell the current tenant and or owner, or former owner, that they don't own the property anymore. And they would say to me, "Oh no, that's not possible. I just paid a law firm $9,000 yesterday, and they guaranteed me that I would never be foreclosed on." There was so much going on that was just awful and it
Wow.
wasn't the truth and people were being defrauded, and I was having conversations one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three, right? And I needed to get the word out because I had people calling me up going, "Look, Mike, you've always solved everything we've ever needed. Any problem we've ever had, you always solved it. So
Mhm.
obviously you'll be able to solve this one and keep us out of foreclosure." What? Right? Okay. So I needed to get truth in the hands of the people who needed it. So I called a friend of mine who had a radio show, and I said, I think it's time for me to, he actually was our pastor and married us, right? I said, I think it's time for me to have my own radio show, and here's why. And I explained it to him. He said, you need to call your favorite AM radio station, talk to the station manager, meet with him or her, and let him know what you know. I did next day. And he literally said to me, he said, "Can you start tomorrow?" um, I needed a couple of weeks, but I took a couple of weeks and I got it going. And we started it off. It was called the Real Estate Zone with Mike Litton, right? My wife named it. And we took the least listened to hour that they had in their entire weekend lineup and turned it into number one in all of AM radio in our time slot in San Diego.
Wow.
It was insane, and that was done in 8 weeks. We doubled the listenership, so we went from 8,000 to 16,000 according to Arbitron. We were onto something, right?
Mhm.
One of the things that I loved the most about my radio shows was I had an opportunity to interview people right off the street, cold off the street, never met them before or nothing. My sponsors would bring them in and go, "Hey, interview this person." Okay. And I'd get their story. There's 37 net minutes in every or hour of commercial radio. And so I would interview them, but I couldn't get deep. And so I
Mhm.
always promised myself if I ever had a podcast, because I don't have a time limit, I would get deep. And so we get people's life stories
Mhm.
and we get a little deep with them, as you experienced, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And I had one guy get up from meeting with me or from the interview, and he said, "When's this going live?" And I said, "Oh, it'll be, 3 or 4 weeks, right?" And he said, "Okay, I gotta go." And I said, "What's up?" He goes, "I just told you 6 things that I've never told my wife. I gotta
Mhm.
go home, right?"
I got to go
And
prepare.
so, right. And people have finished with me,
Mhm.
and they've literally said to me, "Nobody's ever asked me about my life. Nobody's ever asked me about my story." Nobody's ever asked me the questions that you've asked me.
Mm.
And that's the stuff, Heidi, that juices me. I love that. I love the fact that we get from people more than they've ever told anybody, including their wife, in their life, right? And it's everybody has a unique story that's kind of a cause and effect. It's kind of like the chicken and the egg thing, right? Where and I find it fascinating, and our listeners are telling us that they do too, where we start with where they were born, we go all the way up to today, and then we talk about whatever it is that's their amazing success, right? And it could be anything. I mean, they're from all walks of life. They're all kinds of different, right? Like one of our guests, if you've ever been to the airport and to the ticket counter at the airport, there's a kiosk there that are set up in front so that you can serve yourself. One of our guests, that was his first business,
Wow.
that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And he's got one of the wildest life stories you've ever heard in your life. I mean, crazy, right? But there's a running theme or a thread here. All of them have succeeded at a high level in whatever it is that they're doing, and every single one of them, life has said no to them, right? They've had the
Okay.
door slammed in their face. Somebody said no. Somebody said, no, no, don't even, right? And they figured out a way to turn that no into a yes. And not just once, a series of different things, right? But the way they operate is you tell them no, and they figure out how to turn it into a yes. And it's sort of this running thread and it's just incredible. We had one the other day, and I shared with my wife sort of a paraphrase of his story, and she said, "That's not a life story. That's a movie." I mean, it has everything. It
Yeah.
has false imprisonment. It has prosecutorial misconduct. It has Mexican drug cartels. It has money laundering. It has legal malpractice. It has wrongful imprisonation. I mean, imprisonment. I mean, everything you can think of is
Yeah.
in this guy's story, and it's one of our episodes. We have 273 now that we've done.
Congratulations. Yeah, that's emotion,
Yeah,
drama. I'm sure there's
yeah.
relationships in there somewhere. Like it hits
Well,
on
this
the
guy goes to
story.
prison. This guy goes to prison based on a clerical error.
Wow.
A clerical error that was no joke that he found later while he was in prison, going through his legal papers. Right, there were thousands of pages. He goes through the legal papers. He looks at it and he goes, "Okay, this doesn't add up. This letter that says this is how much this company was injured. Right, it doesn't add up." Turned out it wasn't $638,000. It was $34,000.
Wow.
And nobody
Caught it.
verified it. Nobody verified it. And he ended up sentenced to 5 years in prison, ended up serving two. While he was in prison, his mother was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and she died while he was in prison.
Wow.
Now, how can you give that man those 2 years back?
You can't.
You can't give him back the 2 years that he lost with his mom, right? I mean, it's the most unbelievable story. And on top of it, his kids are being filmed right now, and they have a new television show coming out. They're 15 and 16 years old. They have a new television show coming out in the spring of 2025, or spring of this year. And they are coming on our podcast, back on our podcast, he and his children, to promote the television show.
Ah, I can't wait to hear it. I'm going to be tuned.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So for you listening to this podcast, go check out and leave a review for Mike on the Mike Litton Experience. I promise you're gonna love every episode. Because
Thank you.
I've been diving in and it's just very intriguing. Like he is the most inspirational and incredible guest with just unbelievable stories that you would never hear anywhere else. So you talk to I'm sure a lot of the guests you have are in business. So
Mhm.
can you share with us, we're talking, this podcast is around growth, and you've obviously grown your own business to
Mhm.
successful levels, and you've pivoted in
Hmm.
different ways because you saw a gap and a need. So based on your experience and the people that you're talked to, like what are you seeing like what their focus is on when it comes to growing? Whether like if say you're not just beginning, you're not starting out. It's not for like somebody starting out. It's literally
Hmm.
they're in the like a certain spot. They're in the middle phases here. They've kind of overcame the initial hurdles of starting the
Hmm.
business. They're now into building teams and scaling. What would you say based on your conversations and what you've experienced in your own journey in business that people should be focusing on here in 2025?
It's interesting. I it's the fundamentals. And this is going to sound, I mean, I'm probably 100 years old, right? But the long and the short of it is, and this is sort of this running thread in our podcast, is it comes down to leadership. And it comes down to how leaders go about interacting. Like I'm writing a book right now on the power of questions, and the
Mm,
title is going to be Disarm, right? How questions can be are the bedrock of human communication. And what I mean by that is we are programmed out of the womb to answer questions. If you don't think so, take a newborn that seems to have absolutely no direction whatsoever and ask them a question. They'll stop and look at you. They want to answer you. They just don't know how to talk yet, right? When a 2 year old is throwing a temper tantrum, all you have to do is walk up to them and go, "What's wrong?" They'll stop crying, they'll look at you, and they'll want to answer you. Do you know the terrible twos are that they don't feel good and they can't tell you how they feel, and so they're frustrated? And the only thing they've learned to do is throw a temper tantrum because they get soothed, right? They've
right.
programmed the parent to soothe them the 2 years that they've been here, right? And so that's what they fall back to. When they don't feel good, they throw a temper tantrum and they get upset and they're frustrated. Okay. All you have to do with the 2 year old is ask them how they're feeling, ask them how they're feeling, and figure out how to teach them how to tell you that. That's the terrible twos.
Mm,
So when you're in business and you're trying to scale and you're trying to sort of figure out this web that we've woven, right? The most important thing you can do is ask questions. And I'll give you an example. We had a guest on our podcast that's a retired Green Beret, has written two best-selling books, has written a play. I mean, this guy's like a Renaissance man, right? He's unbelievably incredible. His name's Scott Mann. Scott, in his latest book, Nobody's Coming to Save You, by the way, which I highly recommend. Um, there's a point where a company hires him to come to their annual meeting. There's hundreds of people sitting in the audience. The CEO gets up on stage and says, "I'm going to introduce our speaker, Scott Mann, in a second, but I wanted to go over a slide deck real quick and share with you how we did as a company." Scott is standing to the side and he's watching the audience. And
mhm,
what he figured out was the C-suite executives, the top executive team, were front row center, and the CEO's up there, their boss is up there talking. And within seconds of him saying, "I'm going to get into the slide deck and catch you up to speed," they're on their phones.
mm,
Our attention span right now, average, is 8 seconds. Okay. Now imagine if that CEO had gotten up there and said, "Hey, I'm going to introduce Scott in a second. I have a slide deck here. All of you hundreds of people out there in the audience, you're all members of our team. You're out there on the front lines. You're making this company successful. What do you think this slide deck's going to say? How do you think we're doing? Does anybody want to take a guess?" All you have to do, Heidi, is engage that person, that one person in the audience, and you've got all of them. They'll
mm,
put their phones down. Like they wouldn't have even picked their phones up, right? Because
right.
all of a sudden you're asking them a question, right? Because every single presentation they've done previous to this, they just talked at them. If you talk at people, they will lose their focus. But if you ask them questions,
Yeah.
you will keep them and you'll captivate them.
Mm,
Okay. So leadership, and this is the running conversation, leadership is about how you communicate. Okay. If what you do as a leader is you march into a room and you bark out a bunch of orders and then you march back out because these people need to do everything you just yelled at them to do, and because they're afraid of you, that's not leadership.
right.
Okay. That's insecurity. I'm not joking. When you have a leader that does that, they're insecure about what they're going to get if they ask a question. However, if you have a leader that gets it, they'll walk in the door and go, hey guys, you're all part of the solution here. Our sales need to go from here to here. And I'm interested to know how you feel we can get there.
Right.
What is it that you can do to help us get there? They'll tell you, okay? And if you feel like as the leader that's not quite the right way to do it, you can ask them, you know what, that's a great suggestion. Let me ask you a question. If we did a little bit more than what you're indicating, do you think we have a better chance of getting there? If we
Right.
tried it this way, do you think we have a better chance of reaching our goal? If they come back and tell you, absolutely, let's do it, let's do this. Or how about this? What if we tried this as a solution? What if we tried this as a strategy? And they agree to it, right? It's now their idea. They now have ownership of it.
Right.
If you're going to grow your company, you've got to lead your people to a place to where they have that growth mindset. And you need to let them tell you what the solution is.
Mhm.
Make sense?
Absolutely. People want community. They crave to be part of a collective, a
Absolutely.
collaboration. And when you're allowing them to be part of that, and it's like you said, ownership, take ownership and allow them to feel good you're elevating them up. They're gaining confidence, their self-esteem is going up, and they're going to want to do more for you. So when you're having a moment and you need them and you ask for help, they're going to be the first ones to
Mhm.
step up because you've allowed them
Guaranteed.
the space to be seen and heard, right?
Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Guaranteed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so the conversation that we're having on the podcast with a bunch of these executives, right, and these business owners are the things that they're doing to reach out and make sure that they connect with the people that are on their team. We just had a senior VP from a company that's a very, very popular food company, right, the other day. And one of the things that we talked about specifically, and this episode's not live yet, so it's coming, it's in editing. But one of the things we talked about was if a CEO has if a leader has an appointment with one of their employees, they should never blow it off. They should never if they should figure out a way to make that a top priority because it's not what you say, it's what you do,
Mm.
right? So they should make sure that they honor that appointment and they should make sure that they go in with a curious attitude. I shared with my kids the other day, they're 24 and 26 now. I shared with my kids the other day, I said, I want you to do something for me. I want you to take a press blank page on Microsoft Word, and I want you to type 2 lines. At the top, I want you to write, stay in curiosity. At the bottom, I want you to write, stay out of judgment.
Mm.
I want you to print it in the largest font you can, and I want you to put it up on the wall in front of where you work so that you see it every single day as you're working.
Mhm.
Okay. We have to stay in curiosity as leaders. We have to stay out of judgment as leaders. You
Mhm.
got to suspend the judgment and you got to stay in curiosity.
Yeah. Ask questions. It comes down.
Absolutely.
Show that
If
you
you,
care.
if exactly, if you engage your people, okay, and you do it the right way, you'll retain them. They'll work for you and be more satisfied and more fulfilled, and they'll work for less. It's
Mm.
when they feel detached, not honored, not communicated with, and not fulfilled that they start looking for more money somewhere else. And there's always going to be another company that's offering your people more money.
Right.
You want to be the company and you want to be the leader that competes without having to bump up income, right? And if you lose that person, imagine how much it costs for you to go find the next one,
Right.
train them, and then get them to where you need them to be.
Right. How many people do you hear leaving companies? They're making great money, but they're miserable. So they're willing
Exactly.
to take a pay cut to be happier,
Exactly.
to
It's not
feel like
about the
they're
money.
contributing. It's not
It's
about the
not
money
about
when
the
it comes
money.
down to it. Because like it's like that saying, nobody cares about what you know, how much you know until they know how much you care. And
Exactly.
as a leader, an effective leader, a powerful leader, the most successful companies, they do that. They
Hmm.
do that. I was reading a book and I just can't think of it off the top of my head. And he's oh gosh, Steven Swarsman. is his
Hmm.
name. And he wrote a book and I can't remember, but I listened to the entire thing. I was so intrigued with it. And I
Hmm.
listened to it on Audible right before the new year. And he did exactly that. It's an open door. He wants, he promotes from within, and
Hmm.
he allows them to come in and share why they want to move. And it's at the age of the person, he came to realize like that doesn't matter. It's how
Hmm.
much they really I just love that he opens that up for communication, and that communication in anything is key. And communication and connection is currency.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, your business revolves around your people. Does it,
Yep.
yes, you need sales and you need clients and customers, but without your people, they can't take care of your clients and your customers, right?
Right. It's
Yeah.
true. He actually founded BlackRock.
Yes.
Blackstone, pardon me,
That's
Blackstone.
Blackstone and BlackRock too. There
Well,
was,
Blackstone,
yeah,
BlackRock became an offshoot of
right.
Blackstone, but he founded Blackstone, and that book that you're talking about, I've read it too, and I can't remember the name, How It's Done.
Keeping
I
me.
think it's
No,
How It's Done or something like that.
I don't
Um,
know.
but anyway, it's amazing, and I would love to get Stephen
What
on
it
our
takes.
podcast.
What
Yeah,
it
what it
takes.
takes. There you go. What it
Yeah.
takes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I have a goal for him as well. So
yeah,
we can both work on that together.
yeah. Let's get him. Let's get
We'll get
him.
him on both podcasts. Yeah, when I listened to him, and he narrates the book, which
Hmm.
is, well, does he narrate the whole book? I think he does, and I love when they narrate their own books because you can tell like so much goes into it, when they do it themselves. And I was like, wow, he took the time to do this. I was very impressed.
So I walk 120 miles a month. And I
Mm.
listen to audiobooks while I'm doing that. It's kind of my time, right? I just check
Right.
out, I put everything on do not disturb. Like this morning, I was literally walking a 4 mile walk, and it's my time by myself to just be in the moment, right? And I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And one of my pet peeves is when authors don't read their own books
Mm.
for audiobooks. It's just not the same. It's not the same when you have an actor or somebody reading it for you. It's not the same.
It's not the same. You just miss out on their, because they
Yeah,
give they know what they meant when they wrote it, and when somebody
exactly.
else reads it, it's not necessarily there. I will tell you, there's one book that I was okay with, and that's David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. He
Hmm.
has somebody read narrating the book, but he's there. And every time he'll interject during the chapter, or
Yeah.
at the end of the chapter, he'll come in and he gives a whole like more background than you would even get just from reading the book. I thought that
Sure.
was a really cool way of doing it as well. So let's talk about, I know this is off topic and something I wasn't expecting, but how important do you believe in as far as growth of business is related to reading books as well?
It's incredibly important. It's incredibly important. If you look at anybody, Steven Schwarzman, anybody, you look at David Goggins, right? You look at anybody that has succeeded at a very high level, they've literally been committed their entire life to learning.
Mhm.
They're always learning. And it's one of those things where like I was just having a conversation the other day with somebody, and we were talking about this one growth strategy, right? And and I asked them, I said, have you read such and such, right? And they're like, no. I said, well, you know what they talk about in there is right. And it's like, and this one person turned to me and they said, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. Are there books you haven't read? Like, you know what I mean? And there are, there are, but I find it fascinating, absolutely like I read John Rockefeller, listened to John Rockefeller's life story, um, Andrew Carnegie's life story. You know, all these different people that have been um, um, Henry Ford, right? All these different biographies of all these men that have been a part of and a big part of our country and building our country into what it is
Progression.
today. Yeah. And I find it fascinating the things that I learn from them in terms of what they did and how they did it and why they did it. Rockefeller actually was responsible for a river catching fire
Oh, wow. A
because they
river.
didn't know what to do with all the gasoline they were producing, right? And so they were basically dumping it in the river. You know, it's that's the kind of stuff that, And eventually they created these internal combustion engines, and they had use for that gas, right? I mean, it's so anyway, it's fascinating to watch how all those things evolve and all those things take place, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and I just love it. I just absolutely love it. And I love the fact that there are so many lessons you can learn from all these incredible people. Stephen A. Schwarzman's amazing, right? Tony Robbins, amazing. Tony Robbins certified me in sales mastery 35 years ago.
Wow.
I didn't even know what sales was until I was certified by Tony. And it's where I learned the power of questions,
Mm.
right? 35 years ago. And I was also in speech and debate, which also, helped. But yeah, so.
Well, sales is all around asking questions. And as far as reading books, anybody that I've ever listened to that have really grew their business pretty quickly as well, they'll say, one of the things that changed was I read more books,
Mhm.
and they were very intentional on what they're reading. They're not reading like romance novels, obviously. Now, I'm not saying don't read for fun, absolutely read for fun. But when it comes to, putting something that's super simple into your day to day, it's not even like you have to spend 3 hours reading it. Sometimes it's 20 minutes. But anytime you hear the successful people, they'll say part of their morning routine or their evening routine is taking time out and growing their knowledge, like you said, and reading. So let's talk about, you mentioned Tony Robbins, and
Mhm.
behind the scenes before we hit record today, Mike, you had shared with me this company business that you're super passionate about now. So can you, and Tony Robbins is part of that. So
Yeah.
can you talk about that, let us know what it is and why you're so excited about this?
Yeah, so I'm partly really excited about it because I'm using it. I'm
Mhm.
literally seeing the benefits of it. And I'm also seeing the benefits of it with other people who have suffered like traumatic brain injuries and all these types of things. And it's something that we've been able to add some value to people. What it is it's a company called Newcalm, N-U and then capital C-A-L-M. And it's newcalm.com is their website. And what they are is they're an app on your phone that that uses neuroacoustic programming, literally sound waves, to tell your brain what level you want your brain to be. So to give you an example, they have a thing in there for called deep sleep. And with deep sleep, you start this sound that's literally a downloadable program, right? That literally sounds like rain.
Mm,
And every once in a while you hear some thunder in the background, right? That kind of thing. And you listen to it and it tells your mind to go to sleep.
mm.
I was averaging 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night. I'm now averaging 8.5 hours of sleep.
Wow.
And I would wake up groggy and really couldn't get to the coffee machine fast enough, right? And now I wake up and I'm perky. I wake up and I feel
You're ready for
better.
the day.
I feel better than I have in 40 years waking up.
Wow.
I'm not joking. And it also has a thing called rescue where you turn it on, you put on noise canceling headphones, you put on eye cover, right? Literally blackout eye cover, like a sleep mask,
Mm.
and you just relax. And as you listen to this, I tried to think of something to distract me, right? You've heard the thing
Yeah.
squirrel, right? Somebody yells
Let's
squirrel.
try to make this not work.
I have ADHD on steroids, and I could not get myself to be distracted. It wouldn't let me. My brain wouldn't let me. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. And after 30, 40 minutes of doing that, I came back. I basically was done with the thing and I felt refreshed. And it helps you to regenerate. So your body is literally designed to heal. But over time, as we do more and more abusing of our body, and trust me, I've done way too much abusing of my body, we sort of suppress that regenerative mechanism. This doesn't give you a choice. They also have a thing called Ignite. Ignite, if you listen to it, puts you in peak physical state. It puts you in a peak physical state so that you are ready to go. You don't need caffeine, you don't need stimulants, you don't need a pre-workout. If you're going to go lift weights, if you're going to go for a run, whatever, you just listen to Ignite. Ignite gets you going in just a few minutes. They also have a thing called Focus. So if you're sitting down and you're keyboarding and you're sending emails and you're trying to do something complex and you can't afford to have errors, listen to Focus. Focus puts you in the peak mental state that you need to be in so that you don't make mistakes and you're uber efficient. Okay. Anyway, I am absolutely one of the biggest believers of this because I'm using it. And I'm
Right.
also watching other people. We had a veteran that I told you about that was what had suffered a traumatic brain injury. He was a guest on our podcast. He's an author. He wrote a book. And we sent it to him and had him start using it. He was averaging 3 hours of sleep a night. He got back to us and said, "This new calm stuff knocks me out, man. Knocks me out. It absolutely is the right type of technology." They have done over 1,250,000 surgeries without anesthesia just using Nucalm. They
Wow.
put headphones on these people and they operate on them. And then they ask them afterwards, they're like, "What did you feel?" They said, "Well, we knew we were being operated on. We just didn't feel any pain." We
Wow.
interviewed the CEO, Jim Poole, recently on my podcast. And that episode's not out yet. It's in editing, but it'll be out in the next week or so. I asked Jim specifically, how does this work? Man's a
Right.
scientist. Okay. What he shared with us is every single one of these programs, deep sleep, focus, rescue, any of them, they all tell your brain through these sound waves where to go in terms of neuroactivity. So you have neuroactivity that's happening all the time. And when you get stressed, it goes up, right? When you're peak physical state, it goes up, right? All those types of things. When you want to sleep, it drops. But literally, they can tell your brain, no matter what it is you want to do, you can tell your brain with New Calm what to do. You have control of it. And there's a thing called power nap, right? My business partner used power nap. He's the one that introduced me to New Calm and to Jim. And he said, I literally tried everything I could think of to distract myself and I couldn't do it.
Wow.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. It's amazing, amazing technology. So if you go to New Calm, if your listeners go to New Calm and newcalm.com and they sign up, they want to use a promo code. It's REO760.
Okay.
The promo code's REO760. That's the promo code they want to use when they sign up.
Perfect. And we'll put those in the show notes as well, the code and the link. We're also going to send you put the link for Mike's podcast in there as well, the Mike Litton Experience. Question for you, Mike, regarding New Calm. Do you
Mhm.
know if it's cleared for teenagers? I have a 14-year-old who has ADHD and also my daughter's 15. They could both use some focus support.
I don't know the answer, but I'll ask.
Okay. And
I'll ask. I
I'll
know it's
go check it
VA
out
approved.
too.
I know it's VA approved.
Right.
They're working with the Navy SEALs. They're
Right.
also working with the FedEx Pilots Association. So
Okay.
pilots, when they're flying cargo, and I didn't know this, they fly long hours and they need regenerative sleep.
Hmm.
Okay. And so they're using Nucalm for regenerative sleep, for focus, for ignite, for peak physical state, all that. They literally are using this technology. So it's amazing the technology that is available through this app
Hmm.
and how it can affect your life.
Yeah, no, it sounds incredible. I'm definitely going to go check it out as soon as
Yeah.
we wrap up. So if you're listening, for those of you listening, go check it out. Go to newcalm.com, use the code that Mike is giving you to go check that out and take advantage of this because it does sound incredible. I mean, over 1 million surgeries with no anesthesia.
Mhm.
I'm sure the anesthesiologists aren't thrilled about this, but some people are allergic and they
Yeah.
can't take anesthesiology, anesthesia. Some people have really bad side effects after anesthesia. I
Yeah.
remember when I was going in for surgery years ago, my children were little. I broke my foot running up the stairs to go to my son who was in his crib. I heard him crying and I slammed my foot into the stair and broke my foot and had to have surgery. And I was scared to death to go under anesthesia because I'm a mom of two young babies and it was super scary. It would have been incredible to have that option if I could have. So I think, and over 1 million. I mean,
Yeah.
wow.
Million and a quarter, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. That's incredible. So thank you, Mike, for sharing that. Is there anything else you want to share with us as far as something we may have not, I may not have asked you, that any last words of wisdom for people listening, that have a business, they want to grow between what you've created and succeeded in your life, and you've pivoted many different ways. And I love the journey. Like you said, if you didn't get that no back in the day about your first purchasing your first house, you wouldn't have gone into real estate. You wouldn't have taken that no and been like, okay, how do I turn this into a yes? And I think that's a powerful lesson for anyone listening in the growth of your business. No doesn't mean no. It means not, maybe it means not now. Or
Hmm.
how do you take advantage of that no? That is basically a guide, you maybe the guide that you needed to take your next step into getting that yes and scaling your business to the next level.
Yeah, it's you use it as fuel, right?
Right.
If you've ever watched The Last Dance, Michael Jordan talks about fuel. He talks about what he does or what he did and always and continues to do. And by the way, Tiger Woods talks about this too. They create motivation from people telling them no. They create motivation from things that people say that are disrespectful, right? They create motivation in their own mind. And when you interview people like Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan and you ask them, what fuels you? They compete against themselves. They don't compete against everybody else. They're literally on an island by themselves, and that's who they compete with. Kobe Bryant, right, was another
Yeah.
great, you know.
Yeah.
So really, no should be a motivator. Yeah, we get disappointed. Yeah, there are people that, yes, you're hurt when people say no, right? But you also want to figure out a way to pivot to a yes. You want to figure out a way that you can turn that no into a yes. And there's always a way.
Mm.
There's always a way to turn that no into a yes because no doesn't mean never.
Right.
No doesn't mean never.
Not right now, or
No oftentimes can mean that they can't fit it in their schedule right now.
Mhm.
No might mean that they don't have the information that they need to make it a yes, right? And one
Exactly.
of the best things you can do is ask people that say no to you, just say, okay, let me ask you a question. What's holding you back? How can we turn this into a yes? One
Yeah.
of my favorite questions is, how can we win with you?
Hmm. Yes, creating win-win. It's relationships.
They'll tell
And
you.
yeah, and like you said, when where you talk, like I just love the no topic because we're gonna get way more many no's than we're gonna get yeses. And
Guaranteed.
if we're afraid to get a no, then we're gonna be in for a long road ahead, right?
No kidding.
And we're gonna fail before we ever get started. And I was just thinking when you're saying it, it just hit me like what's the opposite of no? If we reverse the letters, it's on. So
Hmm.
you can take that no and go, okay, I just got to know. Oh yeah, it's on. Let's go
All
there.
right.
How do we
Right.
make this work for me and for you? And like you said, creating win-win in order to succeed in any business, it's creating, how do we create a win-win for both, right? It gets to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And like you said, going back to the leader with
Hmm.
their teams, how do you
Hmm.
create a win-win between them? If they feel like they're winning and they're on your team with you, and it's a partnership,
Hmm.
you're gonna grow so much faster and you're gonna grow so much further.
Guaranteed. And when you're down, they'll pick you up.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'll
Yeah.
leave you with this one thought. The only way you lose in life is if you quit.
Yeah.
Okay. If you take no for an answer, that's the same as quitting.
Mm. Love it. Love it, Mike. Oh my gosh, this has been such an enjoyable conversation. I'm so grateful for your time. I would definitely, we gotta bring you back sometime. And I just want to say thank you again for taking this
My
leap with
pleasure.
me, being a founding guest on this show, on this new podcast we're kicking off. For those of you listening, go check out Mike's podcast. He has over 200 episodes, I think over 250
Yeah.
right now.
273 right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at this point, and when this comes out in a few weeks, it's going to be even more. So
Yeah.
go check out his podcast, leave a review. The stories are amazing. Mike, how can they connect with you? How can we connect with you and reach out?
You can connect with me on LinkedIn. So just look up Mike Litton or the Mike Litton Experience on LinkedIn. If you Google the Mike Litton Experience, our website comes up. It's reo760.com, which by the way is also the promo code for Newcomb. Yeah, you can pretty much reach us anywhere.
Yeah, you'll find it. Google the Mike Litton Experience and it's everywhere because
Yeah,
I did and he's everywhere. So he's been doing this for a while. So thank you, Mike, again for being here with me today. And
I
thank
enjoyed
you
it.
for listening to the Business Growth Spotlight. We will see you on the next episode.